YouTube. In today's video, I'm doing a reaction to a little bit of a different type of video than normal, but nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to drop a like and a sub below. It means a lot to me. It helps me grow, helps push my content out there. So I appreciate all you guys doing it. And anyways, without speaking too much, let's get straight into it. Yo, what's good? Today we're watching this video. I can't lie, I haven't seen too much of it. Well, I haven't really seen any of it, but it just caught my attention. I thought, I might record a reaction to this. I might upload this, I might not upload this, but if you're seeing this right now, then I've decided to upload it.
Did you know if you type zldksnflqmtm into Google, you get Keanu Reeves?
There's no way. There's no way that works. Ah. I wonder. Do you reckon it has something to do with the Korean letters? Yeah. So I think it's got something to do with
You can
Korean
also
letters.
try Znaz for Tom Cruise. Delege gets you Winona Ryder, or even
Yo, why would you even say that?
For Leonardo DiCaprio. Why? You might have some idea already given the other stuff here, but this is not some secret code. It's just what happens when you don't realize you've swapped to a different keyboard layout. And because Google is trying to correct for you, mistakenly thinking you're still using a different layout, specifically the Korean keyboard layout. Korea uses a phonetic alphabet, which makes it possible to write any name like Keanu pretty easily. So on a Korean keyboard, you would press these keys in this order to search for Mr. Reeves.
Ah, I didn't know that. So they like press multiple keys to like get one letter, but it's not one letter, but you get one.
Type the same keys using a standard QWERTY English keyboard, and it looks like nonsense. But Google is so used to this happening with people who frequently swap between keyboard layouts and tries to correct for this by giving you Keanu anyways. The same is true in reverse. If you're using a Korean keyboard and you try to search, which is total nonsense in Korean, you'll also
Yo, that's low-key kind of interesting, I can't lie.
get Keanu Reeves. In fact, if you try to Google Translate this, it'll first ask you if you really meant to write Keanu Reeves in English. You have to actually force it to pronounce the nonsense.
ADMOGDDPPDD.
So like when you're typing it, like if you flip it, it's nonsense in their language too. Okay.
In 2019, a Twitter user named Robert O was browsing Have I Been Pwned, a website that shows passwords that have been compromised in a past data breach so you don't reuse them, and he noticed something weird. Among the top passwords used were common things like password or 123456 or asdfajiggle, but a decent amount of hits were on a seemingly random string of characters, JI32K7 whatever. Why were these random letters used over 1,000 times in different people?
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna guess that it was like, it means something. Given the context, it means something like Korean.
Passwords? Well, you might expect this already, but it's another keyboard thing. In Taiwanese Mandarin, which uses a keyboard format called bopomofo, typing the keys where JI32K7 and so on are on the English keyboard actually spells out wodamima, which means my password in Mandarin. Now, if you look at the Chinese...
So like, that's just like pretty much like when, the same as when people just say it as password.
Chinese characters wodamima, it really doesn't look like it should take that many key presses to create if you're used to a QWERTY keyboard, but it does. That's because in Bopomofo, similar to many other East Asian keyboard layouts, you don't type characters directly. There's too many of them to fit on the keyboard. But instead you type phonetic combinations that get converted into characters via an IME, or an input method editor. What's really interesting is that an IME doesn't always only suggest characters. It can also suggest special symbols, or even emoji. That means it can be faster to write many emoji in an East Asian keyboard layout versus a QWERTY one. If you enable the simplified Chinese keyboard layout in Windows, type jiao, which is basically the Chinese way of saying "Let's go! Let's go!" In addition to the characters themselves, you also get a flexing arm, and even this little guy.
Yeah,
also, a funny coincidence with the Korean keyboard layout is, well, normally when you type ZZZ, it means... But on the Korean keyboard layout, those same keys spell out KKK, which you might recognize as their version of LOL, if you've ever seen.
Never mind.
Koreans
Never mind. I thought that was taking. Oh my god! I thought that was taking a different turn for a second.
commenting on things online. Why does their laugh sound like kikiki? Different languages have different default sounds for things, which is another amusing idea. Like, if I wanted to make a spitting sound, it'd probably be like hak twa. But meanwhile,
Did you just talk to her?
to make a spitting sound,
I'm
it'd
joking.
probably
Okay,
be like
sorry.
hak twa.
Refuse to play the clip. Can't make me.
But
yeah.
meanwhile, Soyoung, how do they spit in Korea?
Toi.
Input confusion
What?
isn't just for keyboards, it can happen with other peripherals too. For instance, in Japan, the circle button on a PlayStation controller has always meant yes or confirm, while X meant no or cancel. That might
should
sound
start
weird to anyone
way
who's
back
ever
first,
used a
innit?
PlayStation outside of Japan, because for basically every other country, it's the opposite. Circle means no, and X is yes. Although apparently that all changed with the PS5 controller, where they decided to bring Japan in line with everyone else. PS5 users in Japan now use the X button to confirm an action, and the
That must be like confusing. Imagine still having like a PlayStation 4 and a PS5, and you've only got like some games you don't have on your PS5, so you're like switching between both. I can imagine that would get a bit annoying.
circle button to cancel something, like everyone else. But what's terrible is that the buttons retained their traditional corresponding actions in older games. So, for example, if a Japanese PS5 user wanted to play Demon Souls, they'd use X to actually
I didn't even
select that
think of
game and to load it, but in the game itself, they'd have to use circle to select things. Pressing X would just cancel stuff. It's hard for me to
I don't see why they changed it, you know. They should just kept it the same as it's been.
look up, but I imagine this has caused some serious annoyance among Japan's PlayStation users. There's another interesting idea we haven't explored yet, the dominance of English, or at least the Latin character set in computing. I mean, even with these international keyboards, they usually have the Latin script characters first or foremost, and then whatever unique characters that they have are just below it. Like, I always wondered how they write software in China. I mean, if I wanted to do a list comprehension in Python, I could write something like X for X in range 10 if X is less than 5, as Guido intended. But what if I only knew Chinese? Do they still write for, in, range, and if? Or do they do something like
x 每个 x 在范围10，如果 x 小于5。
And if not, does every programmer from a non-English speaking background need to learn at least a little bit of English in order to do their job? Luckily, my dad is a programmer who grew up in China. He studied computer science in the 80s, so I can just ask. Let's find out.
Hello?
Hey, Dad.
Come on. CapCut editor. W program.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, I had a question actually about what your school was like. How do they like program in Chinese? Because a lot of the programming languages you use will say things like for, I, in range, whatever. But those are all English words. So did you have to learn English when you studied computer science? How did that work?
Okay. So when I studied computer science back in 1990s, 1980s, that was long time ago. Right? So we learned a lot of binary language. We learned DOS. When I first learned how to program computer, we learned C language.
Right.
The most advanced language I learned, I believe, is C++.
Sure.
So that was long time ago. So we didn't have a chance to learn like any, new Java, like Python.
Right, but even like C and C++, there's a lot of English words that they use, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We learn English as a second language since my third grade. So when I get into the college, my English is pretty okay in terms of reading and then writing and all that kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
the only shortage is that we don't have experience to talk and practice. But as far as reading, English is always, I have no issues.
So would you say like the typical Chinese programmer like knows a bit of English or like had that as part of their training?
When we get into the college, everybody have at least 10 years, language experience using English.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Yeah, so everybody knows a little bit about English.
So it sounds like he already knew plenty of English by the time he started to learn programming. Even if he wasn't conversational, he knew the basic words and phrases, enough to understand the control structure of a typical programming language. And that if you were bound for college, in other words, were one of the people who even had the opportunity to study computer science in the first place, you would have started learning it as a second language pretty early on. And while there have been attempts to create non-English based programming languages, none have really taken off. And that's not too surprising knowing the history of computing. Charles Babbage, Ada Lovelace, Alan Turing, even Dennis Ritchie and Ken Thompson.
Just imagine how much different program would be, if it weren't in English. Like, imagine if instead of programming in English, like everyone had to program in Chinese. Yo, big up all my Chinese programmers or people from foreign countries that program, that had to learn an entire different language just to program. That's crazy.
The creators of C. Many of the pioneering moments in computing history happened in either England or the US, so it's understandable that many aspects of computer technology, even today, are centered around the English language. So whether it's random letters throwing surprising results, emoji that show up uninvited, or buttons that suddenly say no when you meant yes, a lot of our digital experience revolves around invisible assumptions about language, about culture, about which key means what. Your computer is just guessing. It's doing its best to understand what you meant based on where it thinks you're coming from. The more you dig into it, the more you might realize we're not just typing into keyboards or clicking buttons. We're trying to translate ideas into an input system, one that was sometimes built around someone else's defaults. Sometimes it gets it right, and sometimes it gets it circle. Thanks for watching.
Good video, man. Good video. Yo, that was like... I didn't know any of that. That was a good video. That was a good video. Anyways, let's cut straight to the outro. Yo, what's good, guys? I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys got any suggestions, any tips, leave them down in the comments. Anyways, like I mentioned before, if you're feeling generous, drop a like and sub. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Peace out.